Ladies, gentlemen, and all of my cat enjoyers out there, the F-14A Tomcat is back. It has been roughly 3 entire years now since the F-14 was added to the game, maybe even coming on 4. I'm not quite sure. You're going to have to want to go and look into that if you actually care, but regardless, the F-14 is a plane that I haven't flown out in a very long time. I lost interest in it. I never really was a big fan of the F-14 in the first place, and once it wasn't so much meta anymore, the F-16, the MiG-29 came out, I kind of just left it in the dark. But there are 2 reasons as to why I have revisited this plane and honestly quite thoroughly enjoyed myself while I was flying it out, which we are going to get into right after this quick announcement. This isn't an ad. Don't worry, don't go anywhere. I do want to do a 30,000 subscriber Q&A, but I'm going to need questions if I'm going to provide answers. So please, if you guys wouldn't mind, go ahead and throw in some questions in the comments down below. It can be about War Thinner, it can be about my real life, it doesn't matter. I'll pick some and make a video of it, and that would be pretty fun. But what are the 2 things I was referring to that brought me back into the Tomcat? Well, firstly and foremost, the AIM-54 Phoenix has received a pretty substantial buff. It's not nothing. Of course, it doesn't make the Phoenix a fantastic missile by any means, but it is a noticeable change, and this is that the fin AOA has been increased, so the AIM-54 pretty much pulls harder than it used to at all speeds, and it's especially noticeable at lower speeds where it doesn't quite have the energy that it would have needed before. Well, now that the fins just pull harder and can deflect more, that kind of compensates for that at lower speed, and it does net you some kills that sometimes you wouldn't necessarily get. Now, make no mistake, I don't think that the Phoenix is like a particularly fantastic missile still. I wouldn't recommend taking any more than 2 to 4. 4 is maximum. Do not do 6. You're kind of a goober if you're taking 6 like this guy on screen. Just throwing Phoenixes downrange, they do absolutely nothing. And then he dies to my Sparrow. If that's not the perfect embodiment of what a 6 Phoenix user looks like, then I don't know what is. But nonetheless, I have been taking my Phoenixes out, and I have been getting a couple of kills once in a while. They are enjoyable. Of course, high altitude is where the Phoenix likes to be, and it is a very effective tool at clearing people out that do climb. Aside from that, what else is different with the F-14A than the last time I played it out? Well, the main thing is just the matchmaker. 11.7 right now is an extremely enjoyable matchmaker for 11.7 aircraft. You pretty much never get a full up tier into 12.7, and if you do, of course that can mean that there's only 4 maximum 12.7s on any given team. But as I said, that doesn't even really happen. Most of the time you're fighting 12.3 maximum BR, but really, very often you're fighting 12.0, 11.7 max BR, so more often than not I would say you're probably the top tier or amongst the top tier plane in that lineup. And it's for this reason I've revisited planes like the F-14A and the Mirage 2000 at 11.7, and I've thoroughly enjoyed them. The matchmaker, as I said, is just a good time. You're not fighting against anything that you feel like you just absolutely can't deal with, and oftentimes it's quite the opposite, where you're fighting people that you just blatantly outclass as an F-14, such as the F-4S Phantom, MiG-23 MLDs, and of course all of the Tech Tree Phantoms and MiG-23s you're going to be running into pretty regularly, and Vigans, stuff like that. The F-14 can handle them pretty easily. The flight performance is still absolutely there at this battle rating. It is definitely one of the best dogfighting planes at 11.7. Only something like the Mirage 2000 and the J7E is going to actually give you a hard time. Other than that, you've pretty much got full authority over everybody else. Granted, when you run into F-16s and you get more up tiers, yes, that's a problem. They will do pretty much whatever they want to you if it comes to a dogfight situation, but your own battle rating and everyone below you, you pretty much rule the world. There are 2 things though about the F-14 that I still don't like, and it hasn't changed. It's been like this since the F-14 came out, and for one, that is the radar just doesn't feel very good to me. I don't like it. I know a lot of people do swear by the F-14 radars, but I just don't have luck with it. It loses lock a lot easier than everything else I play. Having TWS is nice, don't get me wrong, but when you actually lock somebody to shoot your Sparrows or something, it seems like it gets notched and loses lock pretty easily compared to something like an F-16, or even some of the Soviet radars that I've used on the MiG-29, for example. The pulse Doppler is also only a pulse Doppler head-on, so that's much of the reason why it gets notched so easily. It would be really nice if it just had like the normal pulse Doppler, because that mode helps you hold lock against targets that are flying, kind of notching you as well as flying cold. But you just don't get that with the F-14. And then the second thing that you've seen on screen a couple of times already, and I've just more so gotten lucky than anything, is that it is an extremely hot plane. The IR signature of the F-14A is, it's the sun. So if you get an IR missile shot from your 6 and it's something like an AIM-9L, Python 3, or maybe even, God forbid, you run into an R-73 or a Magic 2, you're going to have a very, very difficult time flaring any of those missiles, and sometimes even an R-6EM is going to give you a hard time. I do recommend probably running flares reinforced. I run standard because I'm kind of a bot, I guess. That might be my skill issue I'm having, but like I said, it's just really difficult to flare some of these IR missiles with the Tomcat. Regardless, I do think that if you take this thing back out for old time's sake at 11.7, you are going to have a good time. It is pretty enjoyable. I enjoy the way the Phoenixes play right now. They can get you some kills, and I guess it is a good warm-up for when we get AMRAAMs and other Fox 3s in June. And now that I'm kind of paying attention to the gameplay more, there is one more thing that I don't like about this plane, and it's the RWR. The RWR is not that great. But I'll leave it at that, because RWR is not really my forte. I don't know that much about it. I just know that it's not very good on the F-14A. It leaves a lot of information out. Turning your attention back to the screen though, did you see that AIM-54 I was tracking as it was following that Viggen? It seemed to me, it's of course just my analysis from watching, but it does seem like that AIM-54 pulled a good bit harder than it would have before this buff to adjust for his course correction there. And this is pretty much the way I played the F-14 the entire time I took it out. I went up to altitude, shot my Phoenixes off. Depending on what position I was in after that kind of determined what I would do next. In this case, I had pretty much the entire enemy team coming straight for me, so I go cold, fly into some of my teammates to let them engage, and I'm going to get right back into the fight. We're not doing any of this RTB and get more Phoenixes crap, because the game's pretty much over, but by the time you guys have done that, when you land and take off again, you're not having any kind of impact on the game. So we got right back into the fight the second we get some relief from our teammates. Now I'm going to try to get right back into the furball and do something myself. I am tracking a Sparrow, it's not going to end up hitting the target, and as I'm focusing on this MiG-21 behind me, an F-4S does get a nice sneaky shot into my plane, and it could be worse, but definitely could be worse, but any kind of damage is not good damage. But what do? We get the wings out, full extended, and we just kind of start flying around in a circle because this MiG-21 BIS is never going to keep up. I did probably leave this circle a little bit too wide. He could probably pull in right here if he really wanted to full send for the shot, but he's a little slow to react to me, and I close the distance again, and he's just not going to be pulling in. It's a MiG-21 BIS. He's out of energy after a couple of seconds of doing this, so I'm just going to keep on slotting in around him. By the way, using combat flaps in this kind of a scenario, which I don't believe I did myself, but if I had, I'd be in a much better position. The F-14 loses almost nothing by using the combat flaps, and it gains a lot in terms of what kind of angle you can pull while holding S. Absolutely aimers on the MiG-21 BIS, but eventually it does connect. Unfortunately, don't get the kill for that, and we don't even get severe damage for that because, well, to be honest with you, I have no idea. I guess clearly he was still fully capable of flying that airplane home. Either way, this game's pretty much over. We're just cleaning up the last guy, and well, for me, nothing ever comes of that. So, on to the next game. I have an F-14 locked up who seems to be completely oblivious to the fact I'm here. Get off an old AIM-7, and I'm gonna be honest, I really thought that this would have been notched by now, and I'm very grateful that that Sparrow connected. It's one of those situations, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, where I feel like the F-14 radar gets notched really easily, and then something like that pops up on screen to kind of contradict myself. I realize that, but that has certainly not been my common experience with the F-14 on this particular play session. F-20 is locked up. I want to get my missile off first just in case he has any Sparrows himself, and that way I can kind of ensure that I kill him first. Unfortunately, he just kind of just rolls out of the way of the Sparrow and it doesn't track him whatsoever, but there's still plenty of targets up here for me to shoot at, and I have a MiG-23 who certainly isn't going to be paying attention. I can almost bet that he's a premium player. And again, somehow I am not losing lock on him here, as I'm telling you that I always lose lock. The playstyle is pretty much the same as any other top tier. They really do, for the most part, all play the same. The one thing with the F-14 is at the very start of the game, you get to go to really high altitude and shoot your Phoenixes off, and that is unique to the F-14, I guess, because, well, they're the only active radar missiles in the game. Other than that, you're going to be zooming in and out of the furball, keeping your head on a swivel, and you try to be there for the initial snowball effect for your team. You want to make sure that you take out as much of them in as quickly of a time span as possible, because the early kills in top tier really matter. Like I said, it's kind of a snowball. Once somebody starts dying, the rest of them all start dying. So you want to make sure that happens to the other team and not yours. Make sure you actually have a presence in the match. Don't just shoot your 6 Phoenixes off and then run away, because one, they're probably not really going to do that much damage to the enemy team, The Phoenix isn't that great of a missile. Sure, you might get 1 or 2 once in a while, but you're wasting a lot of potential for your team. And 2, as I said, when you RTB, you pretty much just forfeit the outcome of the match to happen to you rather than you try to actually do something to contribute to it. Overall, I do enjoy the F-14 at 11.7. At 12.0, not so much. I'd much rather just stick with this one at 11.7. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.